Ahem. Welcome to the adventure. Because I'm Batman. Anyways, what's up, everyone? Our friend Mason has a series that he's doing on his channel called The Bleeding Ground. And it is a dark fantasy story that is extremely high quality, both in terms of the video production and the writing itself. And we used to react live on stream with him, but for technical reasons, he is no longer able to come stream with us. So we're going to start reacting to his installments as they come out. Today, Metamorphosis, Part 8, Volume 8, whatever.
Yes.
The art of observation was not just an invaluable skill to possess. It was also one of the things Valdus enjoyed most about life. For someone with the patience to watch and learn, there was always something new to see. Puzzles to solve and plans to be made. The world never stopped turning.
Plans
and
for
who
date
knew
rape.
what surprises each day might bring? Who was Arya? The fact neither of them knew the answer to this question was the most fascinating thing about this latest adventure. If Valdus had been the sort of man to have friends, they might have asked him what his plan was. However, it was essential to determine whether or not he was wasting his time before fully committing to any plan, and it was far too early for that. A casual observer might have assumed Valdus would seek to recreate Arya in his own image, but that couldn't have been further from the truth. The only thing that would achieve would be a pale imitation, and that was not what Valdus wanted. Any artist worth their salt should understand the materials at their disposal, but right now, Arya was an unknown substance. She was in a state of flux, and it would take time for the dust to settle. Convenient.
God, that metaphor for referring to her as artistic materials,
Yeah.
and the subsequent symbolism and inferences that one makes from that.
Yep.
It was good.
Time was all they had. Valdus remained detached and empirical as they left the sea behind and walked into a land that was harsh and unwelcoming. The late September rain left it boggy and difficult to navigate, even dangerous at times.
Just like twist his asshole.
The ground was treacherous and uneven, with no shortage of ways to sustain an injury. 2 weeks into their journey, Arya had taken a nasty fall, and she was incredibly lucky that she hadn't broken something. After that, he noted she took great care with every step. It was often slow, laborious work that left her drained and exhausted, but she never complained. On one hand, she faced the challenging conditions with a stubborn bravado and a will of steel. On the other hand, she was ruled by her emotions. She relished every victory, but she also took every defeat to heart. Not knowing the answer to a question or falling behind, missing a shot with her bow or struggling to light a fire. Any perceived failure would result in a foul mood that might last as little as a few minutes or as much as a couple of days. She was prone to long, silent stretches, punctuated by sudden outbursts, like a geyser ready to erupt at any moment. Arya's biggest problem was that
It's like,
Do you peg Valdus as a guy who would use the word geezer?
geyser, maybe.
Oh, do you think that's just an accent thing and
Yes,
he actually meant to say geyser?
It is an accent thing.
Oh.
Which is what made that hilarious. Because, you could take it from 3 different ways. Okay, so it being an accent thing and it actually being geyser that's ready to erupt, so it's a natural phenomenon. Or, geezer, as in, like, the American slang for geezer, it's an old guy. Or, in the UK, when they refer to a geezer, it's not an old person, it's somebody who's, like, the dawn of an organized crime organization. So it's a term for a gangster. Yeah.
No one said anything about a three-way twisted. You're just a horny old bastard. A horny old geezer.
She expected too much of herself, but Valdus supposed it was impossible for her to comprehend, with a mind limited by her isolated upbringing, that she didn't need to be good at everything. It simply didn't matter if she lacked certain skills, because if Halborough was a fully functional capital city, she would never actually need to fend for herself. One day she would see that civilization held endless possibilities for those willing to take them. There would always be somebody she could pay or coerce to do the things she was unable or unwilling to do. In time, he would teach her how to highlight her strengths and eliminate her weaknesses. What she lacked in practical...
I mean, if you're 46, you only got 4 years until geezerhood, my friend.
skills,
Yeah.
Arya made up for with a mind that was inquisitive.
Yeah.
No, like 14.
No. 4.
Attentive, and focused. She asked a lot of questions and took careful note of their answers. Valdus rarely had to show her
Right.
anything.
Nah.
Yes,
Nah.
Thank you, Twister.
Everything past 50, you're on the decline. That's geezer. That's geezer territory. Yep.
More than once.
God, I gotta back up.
Attentive and focused. Weaknesses. What she lacked or unwilling to do. In time, he would teach her how to highlight her strengths and eliminate her weaknesses. What she lacked in practical skills, Arya made up for with a mind that was inquisitive, attentive, and focused. She asked a lot of questions and took careful note of their answers. Valdus rarely had to show her anything more than once. Although she was volatile and unpredictable, Valdus could see intelligence and ambition. She was determined to contribute, but for her own peace of mind rather than external validation, and Valdus respected that. He even found himself enjoying their journey. Each day brought with it a slightly updated Arya. Little by little she was finding her feet. It was like watching clay forming itself in slow motion, and only time would tell what the end result might be. Arya was finding it difficult to adjust to how drastically different her life was now. Everything had changed, or maybe it had just begun. She wasn't sure.
Same thing.
For the first 2.5 weeks, they'd hiked through a near empty wilderness with only a handful of lonely communities to speak of. Life had a hazy, bewildering quality to it. The days flashed by with a staggering speed, and by the time October arrived, the cove was far behind, and it was as if nature had sailed right past autumn in its haste to reunite with the winter. For a while, something niggled persistently at the back of her mind, but she couldn't put a finger on it. Eventually it dawned on her that it was the absence of an icy sea breeze to chill her to the bone and leave her skin red raw. The idea that she might never lay her eyes upon the open ocean again left her torn between polar opposite mindsets that repelled one another. She could pivot from a bitter sadness to a kind of guilt.
Hang on.
The idea that she might never lay her eyes upon the open ocean again left her torn between polar opposite mindsets that repelled one another. She could pivot from a bitter sadness to a kind of guilty excitement and back again in an instant. It was confusing, terrifying, and irritating all at once. They struck a steady course northeast, and the further they travelled, the more they saw signs of life. Lone campers and little hutments, modest farmsteads with well-tended pastures and livestock happily grazing in the afternoon drizzle. Horse-drawn wagons rolled along winding dirt roads that led to little villages and lively towns, with gas lamps that shone through the night as if somebody had ripped the stars from the sky and scattered them as they walked. When Arya struggled to sleep, which was most nights, she would sit and watch those flickering beacons of life with a mixture of jealousy and hope. Her mind conjured a myriad of alternate Arias that taunted her with stories that weren't her own but could have been. Who would she be?
Oh shit.
The art of observation
fuck,
was
where
not
was I?
just an
Where was it? Did you see?
No, because I was listening.
one thing that helped to dampen her agitation and focus her restless mind. She could carefully consider one idea at a time. She found she had the endurance. This journey is difficult enough without fighting against a barrage of being eager to visit the places they passed. It taunted her with stories that weren't her own but could have been. Who would she be if she'd been raised in one of those towns? Who would she be from now on? She had so many questions, but no answers. Although she'd been eager to visit the places they passed, Valdus insisted they keep on moving. That bothered Arya at first. Why not rest and explore? There was so much to see and they were just ignoring it. She tried to keep it to herself, but it became increasingly frustrating, and in the end she told Valdus how she felt. "Believe me, I understand your frustration," he told her patiently. "I would love to rest, but we have no idea how far we need to go, and time is slipping away from us. I want to reach Halbra before the dark nights draw in. The last thing we need is to be caught in the wilderness when winter arrives. That could be a death sentence. This journey is difficult enough without fighting against a barrage of wind and snow." That was logical and smart. Arya felt like an idiot for not considering it. After that, reaching Halbra as
that's
fast
not
as
the real
possible had become
reason.
her
No.
goal too.
He's like, "Silly girl, I want to get to the murdering.
Right.
I want to get to the plotting and scheming. I want to feel the life force drain betwixt my fingers. I want to cut their heads off and put their genitals inside their own mouths for the loved ones to find. I want to do evil shit."
She pushed herself a little harder each day, keeping breaks to a minimum and maintaining a persistently brisk pace. To her surprise, she found she had the endurance for it and could ignore her fatigue until they found a place to camp for the night. Getting lost in the steady, almost hypnotic rhythm of her marching feet was the one thing that helped to dampen her agitation and focus her restless mind. She could carefully consider one idea at a time, rather than having an army of them clamouring for her attention. One of the many conclusions Arya came to was that her life had been sheltered, monotonous, and insignificant. Only rarely had she been allowed to leave the cove, and even when she had, it was never for too long, never too far, and never, ever alone. Until Valdus had arrived, she'd only ever met...
Welcome in, Insomnia. I have no idea how long until that happens, if it happens at all. I don't even know who that person is, really. We're recording this. We're recording our reaction and commentary on this for YouTube. So we're suspending talk of that nature until after. And welcome in. It's good to see you back from your time out.
a handful of strangers, and if that life hadn't been cut short, her days would have been filled with the same sights, sounds, and faces until the day she died. The story of her life would have been growing up, marrying Bran or one of the other boys, and raising a family. That was it. Nothing else. No adventures, no achievements, no stories to tell. She would have been nothing, and no one. She thought about the cove a lot, far more than she wanted to. No matter how hard she tried to shove her memories into a box, she just couldn't find the key that might keep them locked away for good, and they surfaced again and again. Her dad, picking kelp out of her hair as they paddled in the summer, or chasing her playfully through the cove. Her mum, dancing with him in a pool of soft moonlight with a gentle smile, or carefully brushing Arya's hair as they sat beside the log fire with its comforting crackle. The two of them reading her bedtime stories. She'd cuddle up to Dad as they listened to Mum read because she did all the best voices.
Music selection
He'd
on
cry
point
at the
as
sad
usual.
bits, or double over as he filled the room with his great booming laughter when things got silly. There were so many memories of all those happy days spent with family and friends, and they circled Arya like sharks. "I'm so angry at them." She spoke the words out loud without meaning to, as they strode through the hills one day. The idea had been bubbling away under the surface for days, but she couldn't contain it anymore. Valdis said nothing as he so often did. It was his way of letting her know that she could continue if she wanted, but it wasn't a requirement. Despite the guilt gnawing at her conscience, she was spurred on by a spike of irritation. "I just don't get it," she said, getting more annoyed by the second. "All my life I've heard about how bad the Northern Kingdom is, but look at all these places we've seen. There's so many people, it can't be that bad. It has to be better than what we had." There was no stopping her now. Everything she'd been thinking was fighting its way out in a surge of pent-up frustration. "You heard the way John talked about the Queen, and they were all like that. They made her out to be some sort of monster, but why? What did they even know? Most of them had never even left the cove. Why choose a life of isolation and hardship when we could have had it so much better?" "My guess would be it comes down to some old grudge. So many tragedies do," said Valdis thoughtfully. "Your ancestors, for some unknowable reason, must have taken issue with the kingdom. Perhaps they were angered by some injustice, or simply didn't agree with the way things were done. Maybe they once lived in Helbra before being forced out or choosing to leave in search of somewhere better. Grudges get passed down, Arya. They're fueled by fear and hatred. People tell stories that morph into something different over the years, and eventually the original reason is erased by the sands of time." That made sense to Arya, but it was a bitter pill to swallow. Surely it had to boil down to more than just...
The writing there is so good. Because as evil so often does, Valdis has said something that is exactly true. But you can see how he chose that particular explanation to nudge her in a certain way of thinking, to further distance herself from her roots.
Yeah.
And make her think that the people that she came from are inherently backwater and backwards, and that the more different from them she becomes, the better.
Right. Yep. First deception. Now begins isolation.
Stubborn ignorance. Had something as simple as an inherited grudge really cost them so much? It seemed to her that they doomed themselves by rejecting the outside world without bothering to properly protect what was theirs, and maybe they got what they deserved. That idea planted a seed of resentment, and when it took root it sprouted thorny vines that snaked their way into every corner of Arya's mind. The more she thought about them, the faster they grew, and they tainted everything they touched in the process. Her parents had failed, and that judgment might have been harsh, but it was true. At least it was to Arya. The world was a dangerous place, and they knew that, but they'd gambled with her destiny and lost. They'd wasted time waiting for some arbitrary milestone that would never come. January would bring her 15th year, and yet they hadn't given her any of the tools she might need to survive without them. They'd taken it for granted that they could teach her when she was older, but now they were gone and it was too late. In just a few weeks, Valdez had taught her more than she'd learned in her entire life, because he didn't underestimate her. He answered her questions without being patronising and never spoke to her as if she was a stupid child. If she made a mistake, there were no comments or suggestions. Valdez simply allowed her to figure it out and correct it by herself. There was an unspoken agreement that she'd keep up and pitch in. The faith he showed in her ability to do so made her determined to prove him right. When she'd asked him how to read the compass he was using, it wasn't a big deal or some special moment. She just wanted to learn, and Valdez was willing to teach her. Day by day, he allowed her to navigate a little bit longer, until eventually it became her full-time responsibility. Neither of them acknowledged it. Valdez simply followed her lead without question, and that gave her confidence the boost it desperately needed. She wasn't a useless child. She was capable. She had potential, and she could see that now. What was your life like before all this? It was the 9th of October, and a blanket of gloomy grey clouds smothered the sunset as they sat beside their fire. The second the words left Arya's mouth, she regretted them. She was curious. Valdez was more or less a complete stranger, and she knew pretty much nothing about him. But that question wasn't fair. If she could have had one wish, it would have been to never talk or even think about the Cove ever again. It would.
How is that question unfair? I mean, I get that's from her perspective, but I don't understand how someone would come to the conclusion that that's an unfair question. Like, what was your life like before this? Before you met me? Like, that's not unfair at all.
Yeah.
It was wrong to ask him to open up when she would have resented him for doing the same. She wouldn't have blamed him for being furious, but he clearly wasn't. A murder of crows called to one another, and Arya watched.
Rodal Jub 1. It's a very strange name. Rodo, welcome to the adventure. Thank you very much for hitting that button. My name is Zach. This is my wife, Caitlin.
Hello.
We stream Monday through Thursday at night, and we stream on Saturday, sometimes Sunday. That might be changing, because I might be getting a dive job here, but for now, that's what it is. Right now, we're actually recording to share this reaction to our friend's work with him, because he's a writer, and he publishes on YouTube, and we're his author buddies, so we critique him and talk about his writing with him. So that's what we're doing right now. Welcome in. You're Serbian, not American. Roger that. Roger that, sir. God, we have so international. So international.
There's a light breeze rippled
Pipple
through
sucks.
the leaves of a nearby tree. It doesn't seem like my life anymore. It's a story that belongs to another man, said Valdez after a minute or two.
What? Pitbull really is the Walmart of hip-hop artists.
Yes.
He's like, yeah, generic as fuck.
Right.
Store brand. What is this book about? Well, it is about a man on a quest to get vengeance, and it is about the man he is on a quest to get vengeance from. The names are Evander, the proverbial hero, and Valdez, the proverbial evildoer, and just rotten to the core, nasty, not nice person.
Yes.
It's a tale of growth and friendship and bitter, bitter vengeance.
My parents were travelling physicians. It doesn't seem like my life anymore. A number of crows called to one another, him for doing the same. She wouldn't have blamed him for being furious, but he clearly wasn't. A murder of crows called to one another, and Arya watched as a light breeze rippled through the leaves of a nearby tree. It doesn't seem like my life anymore. It's a story that belongs to another man, said Valdus after a minute or two.
Probably
My
actually
parents
is,
were
though.
travelling physicians who vowed to never settle down,
You wily
and I
bastard!
was raised as a nomad. We lived off the land, and we were always on the move. Every day was a new adventure, and I loved it. When they died, I was alone for a very long time, but then something wonderful happened. I met Persephone, and everything changed. It was as if I'd spent all those years searching, and finally found what I was looking for. I wanted to show her the world, and she wanted to see it. Suddenly, I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was having adventures again. We travelled far and wide, and we were happy. When we realised she was pregnant, we were so excited. Grace was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. She was so delicate and precious. I could hardly believe that she was ours, because I just couldn't understand how on earth we could possibly have created something so perfect. There was a sombre, far-away look in his eyes, and as the fire sent shadows dancing hypnotically around them, he seemed like a tired old man gazing at a mountain of regret.
Deceptive
heard
bastard.
All
Yep.
kinds of terrible stories over the
But
last
I
few
also
years.
love the
Roaming
vivid
gangs
imagery
of-
just captured in that very, very small bit of wordage.
Which verbiage?
Well, looking like a tired old man staring at a mountain of regret. Like, you get
Yeah. Yeah,
All
you can
of
see his
that
face.
imagery.
Thieves and killers. People being slaughtered in their sleep. Entire settlements burned to the ground overnight. People warned us again and again that the life of a nomad wasn't safe anymore, but we didn't listen because we were foolish and we thought we knew better. We did discuss moving into the kingdom to make a life for ourselves in Helbra.
What's up, Airborne? Glad to hear you had a good time. What the hell are you doing in SoCal?
Right.
Right now we're listening to an audiobook from our friend and giving commentary on the writing. Welcome in, man. Hope you're having a great day.
In the end, I was too weak. I loved Persephone too much, and I allowed her to convince me that that wasn't the life we wanted for our family. Our job was to protect Grace, and we failed. I don't think I can ever forgive either one of us for that. I wish you could have a second chance, is all Arya could think to say. She couldn't comfort him, and she didn't want to, because he knew exactly how she felt about her parents, and he would have seen right through the lie. In the end, she thought he was right. They made a mistake that Grace paid for with her life, but unlike her parents, Valdus had to live with the consequences. I missed them, and I wish there was a way of bringing them back. But you can't change the past. The only thing you can do is leave it behind. I believe that things happen the way they must, Arya. There are so many strands that link us all together, and the complexities of fate are impossible to understand. I suppose we might have made it to Helbra safely, but there's no way of knowing. The only thing I know for certain is I was needed. If the three of us were living safe and sound in the city, I wouldn't have been in the cove on that awful night. In a way, I do have a second chance because we made the same mistake, your parents and I. My one comfort is I can try to make things better for you. That night, Arya lay awake, torn between exhaustion and restless contemplation. She would have given anything for the peaceful reprieve of sleep, to just stop thinking
Yeah,
for a couple
Mason
of hours.
is amazing.
Yeah, his narration, and he writes this, he narrates it, he chooses the music, and then his lady helps him put the video together.
Yep.
Just fantastic work. I mean, the two of them really put out. As far as audio content, man,
He and Lee are spot on.
Top
It's
tier.
yeah.
he's so underrated. Like, it's Mason in the Dark YouTube, right here. If you want to go give him a follow. Now let me hit the like button on that too. He deserves it. books on the great. Yeah. Yeah, and this is volume 8. I think there's already, there's nearly 5 or 6 hours of audio for this book, and he's nowhere near done.
Nope.
I'd say there's probably going to be at least triple that amount by the time he's done, if I had to guess.
Yeah. But I
apparently
highly
that was
recommend going back to the beginning and starting from there.
Well, yeah, obviously. Why would you start here? That'd be dumb. You wouldn't get anything. You definitely need to start at the beginning with this story.
Much to ask for. Round and round, on and on. The onslaught of conflicting emotions never stopped, and she was sure it would drive her mad in the end. Every minute felt like an eternity. The hours...
What? So,
You just subbed.
You
Nice!
subbed? Thank you, Airborne. I appreciate you supporting my friend. Thank you very much. And, no, you do not play... Twisted, why are you this way?
I mean...
You want to summon Valdez Doyle to your residence? Like, yeah, sure. Sure. Go ahead. Play the Bleeding Ground series in reverse. Just see how long you live after you summon Valdez Doyle to this waking realm.
Crawled by and ground down Arya's patience. When she'd finally had enough and accepted that trying to sleep was pointless, she shoved her feet into her boots, threw on her coat, stomped out of her tent, and started walking. Valdez opened his eyes to the monochromatic murk of another dawn twilight. 24 days had been and gone, but there it was at long last, dancing on the edges of his consciousness. The ineffable little...
Hey, Mason. Hey, Mason. The old geezer pilot thinks he'll choke out Valdez Doyle.
she got whenever things were about to get interesting. It was the same abstract instinct that had whispered of the darkness that Arya harboured. It seemed today was going to be a good day. Well, well, isn't this a pleasant surprise? He murmured to the familiar figure looming over him in the darkness. Good morning, John. I wasn't expecting guests, but you're always more than welcome. John said nothing, but there was an immutable hatred in the depths of his lifeless eyes. I'd say it's ever so slightly creepy to watch people whilst they sleep, but we're beyond that, you and I. Agree? Asked Valdez, rising lazily.
Well, if it isn't the pot calling the kettle black.
Right, exactly.
To his feet with a casual shrug and
return. I think it's more creepy to poison someone to death, you know, but here we are.
Yep, it's like, I kind of have my own issues with that, sir. Just saying.
Gosh.
In the spectre's unwavering glare. So, you're not done with me. Isn't that nice? I'm truly honoured. I'm glad to see I made such a lasting impression on you. Dark day.
Hang on, I want to start that.
Asked Valdez, rising lazily. I'd say it's ever so slightly creepy to watch people whilst they sleep, but we're beyond that, you and I. Don't you agree? Asked Valdez, rising lazily to his feet with a casual shrug and returning the spectre's unwavering glare. So, you're not done with me. Isn't that nice? I'm truly honoured. I'm glad to see I made such a lasting impression on you. Dark days ahead. Really, John? Is that the best you can do? Don't you think it's a bit too cryptic? I suppose it's not your fault. You still need time to figure out how these things work. Never mind. You'll get there. I believe in you. I have to admit...
I swear.
Now, Chad.
Oh my god.
Okay.
Valdez is one of the Chads.
Oh my god. He's one of the other brothers?
He is one of the man figured out The man created experimental serum to make someone live forever, tested it on one of the other brothers.
Oh my gosh. No,
and that other brother became Doyle.
He's the very first other brother.
That still wouldn't make him immortal. You have to explain the immortality. Yeah, so don't.
You know, maybe all the documentation got lost. You know.
What?
Like it's a story that happened so far back. We're not entirely sure how exactly it happened. All we know is that he's other brother Zero.
No, we know exactly what happened. The man wanted eternal life. He created an experimental serum. He inoculated the other brother. That other brother is now Valdez Doyle. That we know this. This is fact now. This is headcanon.
Well, you'll have to take that up with Mason.
I don't have to take shit up with Mason. That's headcanon now.
I'm impressed. It's been a long time since anybody used these lines.
Mind of Z, if you don't know what the fuck we're talking about, it's because you're not up on all the fucking all of the Mason content lore. He's got this great series of comedic videos called TalkTube.
Yes.
And a lot of what we were just talking about is inside jokes and background lore from all the live streams we did.
Yep. So if you want to actually get the details, you'll have to go back and watch them. We shall see.
Yeah, short name. I knew a chick like that back in the day. Headcanon.
Communication. I thought they were closed for good. What a clever boy you are. Everything was... I believe in you. I have to admit, I'm impressed. It's been a long time since anybody used these lines of communication. I thought they were closed for good. What a clever boy you are. Everything was still for just a second, and a deep chill permeated the tent as Valdez took a step forward with a venomous grin. You have no idea what you're up against. Believe me, you've barely scratched the surface. So go ahead and play your silly little games. I have much more experience. I hope you're willing to get your hands dirty, because you'll need to if you want to win. If you want to involve innocent bystanders, then that's up to you, but be careful who you choose, John. Do you really think you're a good judge of character? I'll ask you this. Whoever this person is, do you think they'll thank you for dragging them into our business when I skinned them alive? There was no reaction.
Wait, what?
Does that mean John is having to use somebody to be here?
No, he said very clearly, no, Caitlin. Mason was very clear. John is appearing as a specter right now. Valdez is referring to anyone else John appears to try to get them to go after Doyle. It's very clear that that's what he's saying.
Okay. Yeah, because for some reason I got that flipped around. I was like, wait a minute, what? That would have been cool.
No response. No hint that Valdez's words were having any effect whatsoever as they silently faced each other like combatants preparing to duel in the cramped confines of the tent. Valdez was impressed. This new, inscrutable John was much more fun, and if he wanted to throw down the gauntlet, then Valdez was more than happy to oblige. It was early days, and their connection was still weak, but it would strengthen over time, and eventually John would slip up, reveal too much. It was only a matter of time and patience. Until that day, Valdez would keep a watchful eye on the situation, but for now it was clear that John had nothing to say, and attempting to engage him was a waste of time. He was about to casually dismiss the vengeful phantom and leave, but then a sardonic smile spread slowly across his wolfish face as a desperate scream ripped through the peaceful morning silence, and it sounded as though it belonged to Arya. Oh dear, what trouble has she found now? he asked with a raised eyebrow and a shrug of indifference. There was the slightest trace of worry behind the blazing hatred in John's eyes. I like the stoic silence, John. Very spooky. Feel free to drop by any time. Oh, and good luck with Arya. Just so you know, until now I had no idea you were still on the table, so if you haven't appeared to her yet, it has nothing to do with me. Maybe you're not welcome. I doubt she even knows she's doing it. Now, best be off. I have a feeling I don't want to miss this.
Oh, all the world building that was just crammed into that dialogue.
I know, it was so great.
All of the fucking rules of the magic system that were just crammed into that dialogue.
So compact, but so much stuff.
So good.
Tiny space.
Hey Gixer, what's up, man? We're listening to this audio book that my friend is building on his YouTube channel, and he wrote it and he narrates it, and this is just
spectacular.
God, the subtle hints at how the magic system works there, the building out of the lore without giving anything concrete. That's a master stroke of soft magic system construction.
Yep.
Wow. Very nice.
Yep. This is how you not info dump people.
Right.
Like, this is how you're supposed to do it.
Right. Hey, Vanilla. I can't chat much since I'm one to say. Well, I'm glad you made it through surgery, Vanilla.
We love you too, honey.
Master stroke. Shut up, Twisted. God damn.
Walking hadn't been enough, and before long Arya had broken into an all-out sprint through the dead silence of the night as if she was trying to pound her frustration into the earth. The last few months had been nothing but misery, and she'd finally reached the end of her tether. She was sick to death of fighting to stay afloat, treading...
We're talking about constructing a magic system in
fiction.
In fiction, we're writers, Airborne. We're speaking about this in the context of writing a story. We're talking about constructing a magic system in your story.
Yeah.
Water with the ghost of the girl she used to be tugging at her ankle. There was no point in obsessing over what could have been. The past was the past, and no amount of hollow wishes or utopian dreams could change it. She knew that, but she couldn't help herself, and she was buckling under the weight of everything bearing down on her with absolutely no idea what to do about it. Keep running. The words came out of nowhere, a strange thought that silenced everything else, invasive and all-consuming but somehow comforting. Keep running. Keep running. Keep running. Was that the...
I would say that belief is too extreme, yes. Caitlin?
Yeah, I would. And as somebody who's, done a little more than dabble with the occult, I would definitely say that. Yeah, just because she went and actually did her research and figured out, actual pronunciations of dead languages and stuff like that, it's not any reason to think that it's actually setting up children to practice actual witchcraft, because the witchcraft that you see in Hollywood and in fiction and things like that is not anything like how it is in real life. So, no.
Right.
It's way worse. Let's just put it that way.
I would agree with Twisted. I think Harry Potter primed kids to be beta cucks more than it did prime them to be witches.
Yes.
Answer? Leave Veldus behind and find a place far, far away where nobody knew a single thing about her. A fresh start. A blank slate. She could be whoever she wanted to be if she just kept running, and it felt like the right thing to do. The further she ran with that mad idea circling around in her head, getting louder and louder, the more tangible her new life became, crystallizing a little more with every step. She was on the threshold of a glorious unknown, with the dream of carving out her own destiny burning bright. But then she tripped, fell, and slammed into the dirt with a sickening thud that left her gasping for air. Reality snapped back into focus, and just like that, running away didn't seem like a good idea anymore. Keep going, or turn back. Smart or stupid, bravery or cowardice, strength or weakness. Arya couldn't tell them apart anymore, and she was paralysed with indecision as she lay there staring up at the stars as if they might rearrange themselves and spell out the answers she needed.
Hang on.
Cowardice, strength or weakness. Arya couldn't tell them apart anymore, and she was paralysed with indecision as she lay there staring up at the stars as if they might rearrange themselves and spell out the answers she needed. I can teach you how to survive, how to protect yourself and make sure the world never takes anything you're not willing to give, how to wield authority and command respect. With my guidance, you will never need to feel afraid again. That was what Valdus had told her on their last day in the cove, and she believed him, but who was he? Would she ever really know? A complete stranger? Her only friend? In the end, whatever Valdus was, it didn't matter because he had knowledge she needed. The cold, hard truth was that she couldn't make it on her own, and it was foolish to think she could. Going back was the smartest decision. It was time to stop acting like a child and grow up. The moon was still clinging stubbornly to the horizon, but dawn was creeping in as Arya approached the warm glow of their campfire. She was less than a minute away when she sensed movement in her peripheral vision. Acting on instinct, she whipped around just in time to see a ghoulish-looking woman lunging towards her with a jagged knife in hand.
Shit.
She was much taller than Arya, with ragged, filthy clothing that hung sadly off her skeletal frame. Her dark hair draped itself lifelessly over her gaunt, malnourished face, and her teeth were bared in a murderous snarl. There was a feral look in her eye that left Arya in no doubt that her next move would make all the difference. The stranger had been counting on the sneak attack, hadn't expected a fair fight. Adrenaline made her
Also, what's
clumsy
great about
and
this is
careless.
I felt that jump scare.
Huh?
I felt the jump scare. Even though not actually, reading it physically.
Arya saw that she left herself exposed and seized her only opportunity. She released a primal roar as she launched herself forward, aiming low with the intention of taking out the woman's legs. It worked, but there was no time for relief. They crashed hard into the cold, dewy grass, but the wraith-like woman kept a firm hold on the knife. If Arya didn't move quickly, she would definitely lose a power struggle. Without a second thought, she sank her teeth deep into the woman's wrist, tasting the metallic tang of blood as she clamped down as hard as she could until the pressure in her jaw was unbearable.
Giggity.
The woman screamed, dropped the knife, and lashed out with her other hand. It caught Arya square in the face, and she reeled back with a bloody nose. This was it. She was going to die. Valdus could hardly believe his eyes as he watched the desperate struggle unfold. The stranger snapped out a vicious blow that left Arya stunned. This was going to be a decisive moment, and despite the fact Valdus wasn't entirely sure that Arya had what it would take, he wanted to give her one chance to prove herself. "Arya!" he yelled as he raced towards them. Just as he hoped, that brief distraction was all she needed. The woman glanced over at Valdus and Arya didn't hesitate. She rolled away and scooped something out of the grass. Time seemed to slow down, and the world contracted until it was nothing more than a bubble that contained just the three of them. Valdus, Arya, and this unfortunate stranger with the bad luck to have stepped on an active landmine. The knife was in Arya's hand, and the truth was crystal clear. Mercy was an option. If she'd let the woman go and told her to run, they would have never seen her again, but it was obvious to all three of them that that wasn't going to happen. A profound sadness crept over the pitiful stranger as she squeezed her eyes shut and slumped hopelessly into the dirt, wearily accepting her defeat. Arya pounced on her with an unflinching finality. She drove the knife home with conviction, and the early morning serenity was shattered by a scream of agony as the blade tore its way through the soft flesh beneath the woman's ribs. Everything sped up, reality rushing back in as their little bubble began to expand rapidly until, snap, the spell was broken. Arya yanked the blade back out, dropping it as she scrambled to her feet, took a step back, and raised a trembling hand to her mouth. She watched, ghostly pale and eyes wide with shock, as the woman struggled to suck in shallow, wheezing breaths. Blood pumped from her side and soaked the grass as tears rolled slowly down her sunken cheeks. Bit by bit, the pain left her face until her papery skin took on a bluish tinge and her lips bore the faintest trace of a peaceful smile. Her eyes were glazed over as she gazed at something private that only she could see. She gave a small, wet cough and mumbled something unintelligible as her hand twitched as if she wanted to reach out and touch whatever she was looking at. Valdis saw the exact moment she finally accepted death's tender embrace, and it was so perfect that he almost broke into a round of applause. Arya was rooted to the spot, her auburn hair a tangled mess, hands and face streaked with the stranger's blood, breathing heavily as she stared down at what she'd done. For once, Valdis wasn't entirely sure what to say, or what the most useful course of action was. He needed time to figure out how she felt. This was a very delicate situation, and one misplaced word might do more harm than good. Before he could make a decision, Arya turned, met his gaze for a second, and then marched mechanically back to camp. He allowed himself one grateful little smile at the corpse, and then followed suit. Just over an hour later, the sun had risen on a pleasantly warm morning, like summer's last dance before surrendering to the autumn breeze. Arya had washed away all traces of the fight, recounted a story, and now the two of...
Now the question is, did the specter of John send the crazy bag lady to get Valdis?
Oh.
Or was that just a crazy bag lady wandering through the wilderness?
Right, exactly. I mean, because they are traveling through moors and, just all kinds of manner of crazy bag people travel through the moors.
Them were sat beside their newly rekindled fire, eating in an amicable silence as if nothing had happened. Valdis scrutinized her carefully, searching for any hint of remorse or regret, but there was none to be found. She seemed relieved, relaxed and carefree, but there was also something new about her. A confidence and a certainty that hadn't been there the night before.
Yeah.
She was actually okay. She believed she'd done the right thing. Perception was a funny thing. It didn't matter that the woman was clearly starving and struggling to survive. In Arya's eyes, she was a dangerous stranger that had attacked her in the wilderness, and her death had been nothing more than self-defense.
Right.
Wasn't this fantastic? When he'd told John that she was balancing on a knife's edge, he hadn't expected her to prove his point in such a satisfyingly literal way. "I think you did the right thing," he told her, keeping his voice calm and gentle. "That's because I did." "How do you feel?" he asked, genuinely curious. "Like I can breathe again. I wanted to know I was different, and now I do. The girl I used to be, she couldn't have done it. She was scared and weak, and now she's gone. I won't let her drag me down anymore." "I see. And who do you think you are now?" "Someone better. Someone stronger. Someone who won't just lay down and die. Some people struggle with taking a life. Do you think you'll come to regret what you did?" "No. People like her, they think they can do what they want, but they can't. Eventually, they mess with the wrong person, and today that was me. She got what she deserved." "You need to remember this moment, Arya. It's incredibly important. Silly, ignorant people place arbitrary stipulations on how and why they could take a life. They fool themselves into thinking they're moral and righteous. They tell themselves they could only kill someone if the situation was kill or be killed. The truth is, to survive in this world you have to be the one willing to strike first. Life is always kill or be killed, and in the end, it all boils down to what you're willing to do to eliminate a threat. You could have shown mercy. You could have let that woman go. But whoever she was intending to rob you at the very least. And if you had, who knows what she might have done. Yours might not be the only life you saved this morning. Whenever you doubt yourself in future, remember that today you had the strength to do what needed to be done. I'll remember, she said firmly, before lapsing into an easy silence. She could feel the shackles of her old life falling away, and the pressure in her chest made way for something lighter. The sun was warmer, the grass was greener, the birds chirping was pretty again. This was the blank slate she'd wanted. Suddenly, a thought occurred to her, and her brows pinched into a quizzical frown. Valdus, what's your plan? I know you're smart, but I don't know how smart. I've been listening to the things you've said, and if Albra is anything like the cities you've told me about, then we need a plan, don't we? Valdus gave her an appraising look, and he could see it so much more now. Strength, steely defiance, determination, dedication, intelligence, ambition. The darkness had been drawn to the fore, and now he could clearly see who she might become. We do need a plan, but right now I don't have one, he said, deciding for the first time since they'd met to be completely honest, because she'd earned it. It's impossible to accurately predict what might happen when we reach Helbra, but things won't be easy. The odds are stacked against us. We have no money, no home, and no connections. In order to survive, we'll have to find creative solutions that may seem unsavory. For example, we may have to lie or steal. We don't need to hurt people. Brute force is the tactic of fools. Deception and manipulation are far more effective tools in a city like Helbra. I'm willing to do whatever it takes, she said, and Valdus could see the truth in her eyes. She meant it, and that was excellent. I don't know who I am, but I'm ready to find out. It's time to start living, and whatever you can teach me, I'm willing to learn, because I'm not settling for a life of poverty and insignificance. I want to be the one in control of my own destiny, Valdus. I want to be somebody, and something tells me you can make that happen. I can, and I will. Aria cities are filled with greedy, arrogant, stupid people searching for the quickest and easiest way to climb the ladder of success. The majority of them wouldn't think twice about stabbing a neighbour in the back to gain an advantage, and they'd think they're so clever, but most of the time they're simple-minded fools, and all you need to do is work out how to exploit their weaknesses. Once you've learned how to pull their strings and make them dance, I promise, Albera will be yours for the taking. That sounds like a plan, she said, getting to her feet with a wry smile and casting a hopeful glance at the northeastern horizon. Come on, let's break camp. We should get going. As she ambled back to her tent to collect her things, she remained completely oblivious of John's hazy silhouette lingering in the shade of a nearby pear tree, barely visible in the glare of the mid-morning sun, but lurking there nonetheless. Valdus sauntered over and made a show out of collecting fruit as a pretense to deliver one final jab. I was wrong about you, but I was right about her. Dark days ahead indeed. I guess that's game on, he said, before offering his new nemesis a playful wink.
Gosh. You did it again. Man. I want more. I want more. I want more.
I am very much excited to see, because it really seems like Valdus has all but forgotten about what's his name?
Evander?
Evander. And now he thinks this specter is his nemesis, when the specter has in fact appeared to Lysander and
To
his dame.
Evander.
Did I say Lysander?
Yes.
God damn it, Zach.
Even though that would be a cool name.
It's a name that it's in the Red Rising saga. Yes, sirree,
Yes.
Bob.
So-
Here's what I
Yeah.
thinks this is heating up. I can't wait for the next one.
I love it, and I love how you just really captured Valdez in all of his in the reaction to Arya killing the lady and him observing like her state of mind and things like that, and you really get the idea that he's taking this as from the mindset of a master craftsman or artist of some sort, and he's like, okay, I'm eyeing the temperature here. We have to, can't let it boil over.
If I strike
Kinda
right now,
like it.
the metal's too soft right now.
Yeah.
If I strike, I'll misshape it. But I can't let it cool off too much, lest I strike and crack it.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. It's just the ability to capture that meticulousness, I guess is the word I'm looking for, is without a whole bunch of verbiage it's just
For me, my favorite thing was the conversation with the Spectre of John and the world building that happened in that conversation. The construction of the soft magic system and the lore of the magic system and the hints of it just all the things that were alluded to and the possibilities it opened up is just a very fascinating train of thought to go down.
Yeah.
Especially in the context of the rest of the story.
So many great parts to this because I just want to go through and be like, this is awesome, this is awesome, and this is awesome, but also the entire thing.
All right, this is already over an hour.
Yeah.
We're gonna wrap up. Mason, keep at it, buddy.
Yes, please.
Can't wait to see where you go from here. And everyone else who watches, welcome to the adventure.
Welcome to the adventure.